Hey guys, this is JP's LEGO Reviews. Have you ever considered purchasing a LEGO Technic car? Well, if you have, here's the next thing you have to figure out before you look at the exact set you want to get. What type of LEGO Technic set do you want? Do you want a small LEGO Technic car, a sort of mid-range Technic car, or an extremely detailed, heavy, but expensive Technic car? I'm going to run through what each kind of car offers and which one would fit better for you. So let's break it down. Firstly, what happens if displayability is your biggest concern? Well, you simply have to go for the more expensive vehicle. But let's then compare. Okay, we have the most expensive vehicle being the most displayable. What about the other two? How well do they fare with displayability? Well, all these sets are pretty displayable. So if you want a large LEGO car that's more of a shell, then the mid-size set such as the McLaren F1 is for you. But if you want a set that looks good but is far smaller, and I don't mean like a little bit smaller, but something that's monumentally at a completely different scale, then a set like the Lamborghini Huracan Technica on the far left in lime green would be the set for you, because it's still displayable at a much smaller size. But now let's move on to the realism of these sets. If realism is something that's very important for you, well, again, the Bugatti or the super expensive car would be the most realistic. But you have the McLaren-sized vehicles. Now, with these sorts of size vehicles, it's really hit and miss with sets, and even with the smaller Lamborghini Cyan size sets. Now, I chose these sets because they're quite realistic, but the F-150 in the past, and there's a bunch of other sets, the Ford 488 for the McLaren sized, or if you're looking at the Lamborghini Cyan sized cars, you have quite a lot in those ranges as well. But in both of those categories of cars, a lot of sets are not realistic, and a lot of them actually look quite terrible simply because of how unrealistic they look. So if you want a set in general that has a lot of realism, get the Bugatti. But when it comes to realism in the smaller ranges of sets, it's more set dependent than the size dependent. But now let's look at the value proposition of all these LEGO Technic set types and which one will work for you. Now, when it comes to value for money, here's a massively important question you just need to answer. Do you prefer a LEGO Technic set that has a lot of functions or not? And also, do you want something that's large or not? Because if you want something with functionality, you're going to have to go big. And you're going to have to go for a Bugatti Chiron type set. And the reason why is because these sorts of sets provide huge amounts of functionality, yet they also are quite large as well. If you're looking for something that's kind of smaller, possibly get a set like the Land Rover Defender, but LEGO haven't been making sort of those sorts of sets lately, since they're making a lot more shells. But if you want something large, but that doesn't have a huge amount of functions, go for the McLaren, and this actually is more in the functions category than the value proposition. But if you want something that doesn't have a huge amount of functions and is small, then you would go for the Lamborghini. Now, when it comes to value proposition, they all kind of roughly line up with their price points. The Lamborghini sort of size sets are $50 to $60 US. The McLaren sort of sets are $150 to $220 US. And the Bugatti or the extremely displayable / function rich sets are $400 US plus. Now, which one would I recommend as a value proposition? Well, firstly, if you can, try and get all these sets on discount since it's going to be far cheaper. But again, it highly depends on what you want and what you consider valuable. But I will say, the worst valued sets, I would say the McLaren sort of sets. And the reason why is because you're getting just a big shell without any functionality. And if you're already going to spend quite a lot of money on a massive Lego shell, you might as well have a lot of functions in it as well. And the McLaren Vayner sets just do not have that. Meanwhile, the Lamborghini Cyan, not Cyan, but the Huracan Technica set is cheap enough where you can just not really care too much about functions, and the Bugatti is expensive, but it has all the functions you could ever want. But now, let's move on to building experience. When it comes to building experience, this is where how much you care about functions also bleeds in. Because if you don't care much about functions, then you're looking for a more plain building experience. And if you're wanting a set with a plain building experience, just get one of the small sets. You don't necessarily want to spend the money on a McLaren where you think you're getting a lot of building experience if you're wanting that, or if you're wanting to get a good building experience rather, with lots of functions, but you're getting basically a shell. Meanwhile, if you're looking at something with a lot of functions and very complicated building experience, if you will, then the Bugatti set is for you because it's feature rich, it has an awesome building experience, but you do have to pay for it. But now, let's move on to my final thoughts on this guide. Now, what Lego set should you get if you're a Lego Technic fan, or if you're a Lego car fan looking to buy a Lego Technic set? Well, here's another thing that's super important: budget. You just may not have the budget to go all out on a Bugatti sort of set. So what should you? Well, if you care about functionality, you want a Lego Technic set with functions, and you don't have $400 to spend, maybe 200 and under, what I actually would recommend if you're in that sort of category is look at a construction set. Maybe look at the John Deere set, or look at some sort of set that is maybe a construction based set, because those sort of sets have a lot more functions and you can get them for far cheaper. But if you're really into functions and you have a lot of money to spend, go for the Bugatti. Now, what if you're into the look of a set? Well, if you have an unlimited budget, go for the Bugatti again. But if you're into a really good looking car at maybe $200, $220, I have two separate options to you. Either consider a set like the McLaren, because these sets are good looking. But here's an interesting alternative. Look at a Creator Expert set. The reason, or now it's Lego Icons, and the reason why is they're super, super detailed. They're in system built, so they're using Lego bricks instead of Technic construction, and they look fantastic on display. But their main purpose is to look good and not to integrate basically any sort of functionality whatsoever into those sets. And obviously, if you're on a low budget, if you're under $100, if you want a good looking car shell, yeah, I would just recommend getting the Technic set. These are probably some of the best looking Lego shell sets. When I mean shell, I mean car sets without basically much functions that you can buy. If you want a set at that sort of price point that does have a lot of functions, like I said with the other one, get a construction set. And the reason why is because, or maybe a farming set, one of those, because those sets come with far more functionality than this car would. And you'd enjoy it better simply because what you care about more is how a vehicle works rather than its looks. And the Lamborghini focuses on looks. And going through all these considerations, because budget is very important, and also the other non-budgetary considerations, this is the guide to the Lego Technic cars that you should buy. If you're confused about what Lego Technic car type to consider, well, I've covered all that you would have possibly been thinking about somewhere in this video. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button. If you want to see more content just like this, please subscribe. Also, let me know below what your thoughts down on this video. I hope you guys have an awesome day and keep building.